So, guys, I want to talk about another news story. And what happened was that, a few weeks ago in Texas, there was this school principal. And what happened was that she was dealing with a kid with mental health issues and with violent tendencies. So this kid ended up throwing like a chair and it hit her in the eye, and she actually has no blind. She was blind in her eye. She got like disfigured for life. And there's actually talk about removing her eyeball. And there's a couple of things I do want to say about this. I also heard the follow up, and she was definitely talking about, like the schools are underfunded and they need more funding to deal with kids like this, or there may be no more programming to teach people how to handle children like this. And I felt a little upset with this. I didn't like hear the whole thing, but the thing about it is that first of all, that I do feel that it's bad to say that this should be for more funding. I think you need to kind of break it down a little bit more and say that, okay, we need more like self defense classes for teachers. We also maybe need more padded rooms, or like rooms, or like even like boards or whatever to restrain kids on. Like there's beds that you restrain kids on in psychiatric hospitals if they're that violent. And then the other thing too is that I really think that the other thing that's kind of lacked was really talking about charges, because I'm a firm believer in that it doesn't matter if you have mental health issues or not. Really, you have to be held accountable for your behavior. If this kid is so mentally ill and he has no sense of learning any type of emotional control, he should be like put in a psychiatric ward, a high like security hospital for like at least 10 years, 5 to 10 years for this, because honestly, this is a deep assault, really. And I think that the thing about it is that I just want accountability for their actions, because it brings up this whole debate with kids with mental illnesses. I think for a long time in history, we watched films like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and you saw like people with mental health issues getting out of control. And like in that film, people just beat the shit out of people with mental health issues in hospitals, or people would beat kids harder with belts and other things like that, growing up, back generations ago. And people felt that that was the way to teach those people, what, you're not above the law. Or if you have a mental health issue, it's not about stopping the behavior, like somebody being violent. It's about beating the shit out of somebody to send a message that, what, you don't get out of place. The same way, people, if you have a dog that bites you, people believe that that gives you right to murder the dog or beat the dog near to death, really, to teach it that you don't, you know your place, really. So that's how it was generations ago. But nowadays, there's a split, really. There's a side of people who want to teach their kids responsibility and consequence for their actions. And I do believe in that, because it doesn't matter if you have a mental health issue or not, you need to be accountable for your actions. I'm going to, while I'm on that subject matter, I'm going to talk about my life. I was misdiagnosed with autism. I learned that I struggle with mental health issues brought on by traumatic experiences. It's something genetic. But I remember, many times in my life, in high school, what happened was I was bullied a lot in middle school, and I was also taught that my mother was very abusive, almost killed me and my older brother when we were babies. And she took the glass bottle and smashed it across my brother's head. And I was told adults have problem too. You need to suck it up, move on. I remember in high school, from the years and years of bullying, from the years and years of domestic violence, from the years and years of bullying and abuse by people. I remember in high school, I used to act out a lot. I used to use very hurtful language. I used to just, ruin people's days because I had so much anger built up, really. And I remember like my dad just saying it's autism, or it's like, oh my God, that happens in autism, where, one day their brain's gonna turn and they're gonna be like crazy and all that stuff. And I remember like my parents being undermining, having their own philosophies. I remember like one time there was a teacher that accused me of grabbing my crotch to her and saying, suck this, suck this. And then she made up a lie and said that I was saying that I'm being accused because I'm black, and that was not what happened. It was actually somebody else who did it. But the thing about it was that there was a lot of times in high school I didn't get punished because my parents played the autism card. And I also remember a few years ago I had a job, and the job protected me because I got myself into some serious trouble. They called my father, and I was like maybe 26, 27 years old, and I got out of it. And it was also like my dad playing the autism card. and mental illness card. And then I got fired from that job a few years after that. I remember like my father saying that, obviously I was discriminated against. Yes, I was discriminated against, but there's things that I did. But I learned a lot from the termination. I actually stopped seeing my counselor after that because it seemed like he was teaching me to be accountable for all my behavior. But when other people hurt me and disrespect me and are prejudiced against me, it doesn't matter. It goes over his head, really. So I left him for that reason. But one thing I thank him for was that he taught me that I did enough bad behavior in that situation to lose my job, really. So I was happy he taught me accountability, but he never taught me mutual accountability. But he also taught me that I have a road. I can go down the path of using a mental health issue to keep to get out of trouble, or I can be held accountable for my actions and digest that. And I chose the latter. I hold myself accountable for my actions. I digest that. Don't listen to what my father wants, but also the other things that I had to get away from my counselor because you can't be with somebody that teaches you that whenever you do bad things, you're held accountable. But when other people do bad things to you, it goes over their head. You have to work on getting a better job, really. So I'm happy I left it for that reason. But the other part of it is like what I've said. Holding people accountable despite mental health issues is important. And sometimes as somebody who's worked in the psych ward, that's what they teach the kids, that, if you get mad and you knock over a trash can, you got to clean it up. If you're violent, you got to be restrained. If you're violent, you go into the quiet rooms. If you're violent, you get more time. If you're violent, there's time to pet the therapy dog. You don't get that. You're taught consequence for your actions, and sometimes that's what kids are taught. The teenage psych ward where I work, kids are violent. They get apprehended, pinned to the ground. They get they get some sedation, and then they're just hanging on a bed like this for a couple of hours. And as everybody said, what an embarrassment, really, and all that stuff. And then the thing continues and continues. And then sometimes the kid's too violent, crazy. They just put them in a more severe psych ward. They'll send it to, I think, Eagle House or something like that. There's a more severe one in where I live. But the point of it is that there is a teaching of there's consequences for your actions. And I think that that's appropriate. And that's also what's taught in psych wards because some people don't teach their kids or some people give too much leeway. And then the other thing is that, what we see in a lot of schools is that sometimes there's people with mental illness and there's a pattern of just very, very bad behavior. And sometimes there's lack of punishment, or there's also that idea of, it's discrimination or whatever to not let that kid come to school every single day when they can say, like, it's discrimination because, what are you going to do with this kid? He's going to be home all day. What are you going to do with this kid? Is he going to, he has to have something. He has to have an education, really, despite his issues. But the problem with that is you're putting everybody else at danger, and that's not right. You look at Eric Cartman in South Park, you see all the things that he's done. That joke about him, like, doing something out of Saw to a kid at his school, but he comes to school the next day. I know that's a cartoon, but there are situations in real life where there are kids who have very violent behavior, sexually inappropriate behavior, verbally abusive behavior, like I did, and allowed to go to school every single day with no consequences. And that's not right. But then there's parents that say, it's a mental illness. It's not just autism. It can be other thing, or it could be, understand that the kid was abused as a kid, or he came out of a rough situation. You can't just teach always this consistent, there's no consequence for your actions, because that could have been the situation. We don't know for sure. And then the other thing too is violent behavior. Is that sometimes, a person throws something and goes crazy. Like sometimes it's in the psych ward, a few hours later, that person's out and free in society, and they kind of like are like, okay, you did this, but part of what the way to teach you is for you to consistently be in our environment until you learn not to repeat that behavior. And sometimes that's not good because you put everybody else at risk. If somebody's just, always doing inappropriate behavior, then that needs to be punished and stopped at the beginning, and then there has to be restrictions. But you can't just kind of keep resetting that. And if you keep saying, okay, well, your punishment's lifted, and that happens again, you have to make it more severe. Then it happens again, you may have to remove that person from the situation. That could have been this kid. So that's how I feel about it. I mean, and I do have to talk about another disturbing story in high school, that there was this kid who had a girlfriend. They both had mental health issues, but he would do things like, grab her breast, just grab, her genitals, finger her in public. and or grab her arm, no, grab her leg and be rubbing Santa's leg. And it was one of those things too where, she kind of consented, but that was completely inappropriate behavior. That's not appropriate for anything in high school. And honestly, if that was ever brought to attention administration, that he would be kicked out, really, even if it was consensual, because you don't finger somebody's genital, you don't finger somebody's, just, you know, you don't finger and you don't put your hands on somebody like that ever in a professional setting, because that's sexual harassment to other people who are not involved in that intimate relationship. The other thing is that they both have mental health issues. What would happen if she actually wanted to say no, but she couldn't? And what would happen if this guy was also a person that had a trouble reading lines? If there's a person that says yes to everything, maybe there's some issue in that person's head, really. But the point of it is that it continued, and people knew about it, teachers knew about it, but they let the guy do whatever he wanted because, I'm not sure why. If I was to guess, really, I think that they kind of said it was her responsibility to come forward if she felt uncomfortable. And I also think that the other thing was, and she admitted that she was okay with it, but the other thing was that he was not really taught that, okay, this is school, there are boundaries, and if it's something that their parents are okay with, which I don't think any parent would be okay with, that should be behavior and in your private life, outside of school. It should not be behavior within school, but also that is concerning that I think, in high school, she was a year younger than him. So, 15, 16, 15, 17, 16, 18, 17, that he's doing that, and other things like that, There's also a story too that, he was caught with his pants down with her because he wanted to do some dry humping. But the point of it is, just like hump her while she pulls on her pants, and while he's in his boxers, not putting it inside her, but you get what the thing about it is, there has to be, if people know things like that are going on, and this person has like some sexual addictive or predatory or sexual conquest or very sexually inappropriate or no sexual self-control behavior, this guy needs a psych ward. This guy needs to be expelled. This guy needs to be taught boundaries. This guy needs to be really drilled that you can't be treating people like that. You're also in a high school setting where that behavior is offensive and it's disturbing to others because there's people who are very conservative. But the point of it is that no matter the stories and the rumors, there was no investigation or looking into what happened. And that's not right, really, because, what would have happened if, what would have happened if there was a rape or sexual assault? And this girl, I was actually friends with her a couple of years ago, and we talked about it. And she actually said that she kind of wished that she knew a lot about boundaries. She kind of wished she could sue the school because they kind of knew about this stuff. And honestly, she felt uncomfortable even though she said yes and she was okay with it, and I think that there should have been intervention, but it's a clear example. Sexual harassment, sexual predatory behavior, and seeking consent from and a person with mental health issues seeking consent from a person with another person with mental health issues. It's unfortunate that happened, but there could have been intervention. And just like this incident with this kid throwing chairs and furniture and other things like that, and blinding their principal, it sends a message of, is this the first time this happened? Is this a pattern of behavior? Is this 20, 30 times? And then what are you doing with this kid in school if he's behaving like this? This kid should be not allowed in school, but then also to send a message to everybody that it's not about bringing these kids into school and saying, okay, they have mental illness, you have to tolerate this, or bring them to school and saying, okay, well, we know this goes on, we think this person has a mental illness, but we're going to let them do whatever they want because we've given up on them. Or maybe their parents are wealthy and their parents say, okay, that's just how he is. We're friends, me and the school are friends, we're going to tolerate all this. So I just think that's another issue as well, is kind of that concern of, what led to this incident. Was it avoidable? Was it a situation where they gave this kid too many chances? Was this a situation where maybe the principal's at fault for defending this kid when this kid should be more severely punished. So there's a lot of different arguments, but I think the big thing is that if you have a mental health issue and you cause harm to others and you have a pattern of behavior that's violent, you should not be allowed in schools. And it's not discrimination, it's the safety of others. And part of acceptance and accommodation and all that stuff is really just understanding, is really understanding that whoever you bring into a public school, they are safe around staff members and all people there. There is a reason why I work at a hospital, and there are people who get arrested and banned from the hospital for behavior that's not okay, really. And because even though everybody deserves or has a right to an education, everybody has a right to a free education in America in the public school system, but there's a certain point where that gets thrown out the window if you're a violent person, if you're a danger to other people. And that's not about inclusion or discrimination. That's about understanding that you are accountable for your safety and how your behavior influences the safety of others. So I really hope that this kid's punished for this. I really hope he's not allowed at that school. There's something called applied risk, assumed risk, which means that if I work in a psych ward, there's a patient that pushes me or punches me or throws something at me. They can look at that and say, okay, if it's something like a minor scratch or whatever, you should know better because you were working in a psych ward. But if it's like a bodily injury, like somebody losing an eyeball like her, she has every right to sue the school because, that's an extreme, really. And if there was kind of like overprotection of the student and not really dissecting, his behavior and stopping his behavior and allowing things to continue, it's on the accountability of the school because obviously, they could have prevented this. And if it was the principal just giving him too many passes and defending him too much, and then in the speech just really saying this is why we need more funding for more education on a student like this, then you're not solving the main issue. It's about your safety. And clearly the student's not safe. And I really just hope that, and I really just hope that, if she's kind of like been permissive about his behavior, if that's the root of the situation, then I don't think that I think that if I was a judge, I would say no, then I can't do that because you were being ameliorating his behavior, and then you got in trouble for that. But and so then you're almost at fault for what happened to you because you have to be understanding. But I also will say too that, but I do think that in general, I would say that the school should pay for a surgery. The kid should be banned, and the kid should be either a psych ward for 5 to 10 years because of this, or he needs to. And if he understands his behavior, and if it's like he's kind of mixed between mental health and can face the consequence for his actions, he needs to be charged with assault and vandalism and other crimes as well, really, and serve like maybe 5 to 10 years because there needs to be consequences for your actions. Mental health is not an excuse to avoid consequences because all that's teaching is to teach somebody that a mental illness is a get out of jail free card, and that's definitely one of the reasons why we have a lot of problems nowadays. It doesn't mean we have to get back to one floor as the cuckoo's nest where we're beating the shit out of mentally ill people whenever they fuck up. It just means that mentally ill people they have to be punished appropriately, and that's the word, punished appropriately. And being punished appropriately means that it means that you don't do something like you don't punish people at all.